Kim Ades from Frame of Mind Coaching, and you have just joined us at the Frame of Mind Coaching podcast. And today, my guest is Jonathan Satovsky. Jonathan, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So you're in New York. I can see kind of the New York look and feel behind you. And you've written a book. You are a financial wizard, genius guy, and you've written a book called Your Rich Life, A Human Approach to Investment and Building the Wealth of Your Dreams. So does human and investment go together? Like, how do you even put that in one sentence?
Well, I feel honored to be speaking with you because the human and investing goes together in the same way that frame of mind coaching goes together. Everything is around the frame of mind, right?
So what exactly do you mean by that? I read a little bit about in your book. I really, it's funny, you had a very long intro, and I have to say it was probably one of the best intros I've ever read, because usually people just skip over that part, but I really enjoyed your intro. So what do you mean by that? You really talk about the idea that investing well is really a function of, the way I see it, of one's thinking. What does that even mean?
So I think that habits, discipline and habits are something that people, if you played sports as a child, might have a natural proclivity to in sports, but they don't necessarily apply it in their financial lives, habit forming, because in our daily lives, we have a lot of seduction. Like I use the analogy of sirens that are calling you, seducing you to spend money for consumption, for travel, for investing in things to be able to get rich, lottery tickets, or fear and greed. Like there's a lot of things chipping at your mindset.
Right.
And there isn't really formal training about financial literacy in high school and college. So people rumble, bumble, and stumble till they're 60, 70 years old. And they're like, okay, now I need a financial advisor to
fix it,
clean up the clutter and fix what I've gotten to here. And what do I do now?
Right.
So I thought that it would be helpful to be able to get to the root of the issue, to be able to give some lessons that I've learned over 25 years to people at, like my 7th grade daughter. How do I start instilling good habits, at 7th grade, and instill that so at 60 people can have financial freedom and independence and abundance in their lives?
Okay, so go back. I mean, are you saying that we're attracted by shiny red objects or squirrels? Squirrel, right? Is that what you're really saying?
Absolutely. It's
okay.
And particularly, there's a lot of neuroscience around the idea that the pleasure pain principle is 2.5 to 1. So it's super easy.
Wait, describe that. What does 2.5 to 1 mean? Pleasure pain principle.
So if you make a dollar,
yeah,
or let's say it a different way, you make $2.50, you expect to make money. Right. But if you lose $1, the pain is so immense.
Got it.
That it's like, oh my God, my life is ending.
Well, in the field of thought management, right? Like you might get 100 compliments, but one criticism can, be a total blow. So it's the same concept.
Perfect. Actually, that I heard actually in marital advice, which I haven't yet mastered. But in a spousal relationship or someone really close to you, you're supposed to give 5 to 1 compliments relative to anyone that's not an emotionally connected family member, in order for someone to hear you.
So let's just kind of take a step back, because this is very, very linked to some parenting guidance that I received years ago, which is the 80-20 rule. And it's very interesting. The 80-20 rule is that we need to, when we think about our communication with our kids, we need to communicate with them 80% of the time in a positive way, and leave only 20% for negative communication. But negative communication can sound something like this: go brush your teeth. We think that's neutral, but it's not. Instructions are negative.
Interesting.
Right? It falls into the negative category. So let's come back to money. We don't like to lose money, is really what you're saying. And so even if we're losing a very small amount, that seems to trigger us emotionally.
So, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The first thing is psychological safety. So I grew up sort of in the root of a financial planner, but love intellectual curiosity of the investing world. And financial planning, the first step of financial planning is to make sure that someone is safe. How do you make sure that they have a foundation, a root foundation, so that they can be bulletproof through whatever happens in their lives, through setbacks, through, good and bad. And that psychological safety, that root foundation, gives people courage to look forward and plan with courage, like you would, as you were telling about developing children. You want your children to be fearless. You want your children to be able to have courage to pursue things outside of their comfort zone, because that's where all learning is, outside of their comfort zone. It's scary to go outside of your comfort zone, but that's how they're going to learn and grow. So the same thing is in investing, is that if they have a foundational psychological safety from a balance sheet perspective and liquidity, lines of credit, and understand a balance sheet, which most people don't spend time on, our balance sheet and cash flow. You can't make investments without understanding the interrelationship between your balance sheet and cash flow.
Right.
And that's the foundational work that I think.
Let me translate this for people who aren't financially savvy.
Yeah.
But are you saying that they have to have a sound financial mindset, or are you saying that they have to have a sound financial balance sheet, like a financial status?
Well, everyone doesn't start out with a sound financial status. So it's both. I think a mindset, a growth mindset and an abundant mindset is very important. But listen, I've seen people that are really conservative that do very well because they focus on a sound balance sheet. So you can accomplish success in any way, but the root of it is knowing yourself and finding a way to get on a path toward your journey for abundance.
So you use the word bulletproof before, which I'm like, yeah, I want that, right? Like, so you use that terminology, and at the same time you use courageous. Can you be bulletproof and courageous financially at the same time? Like, do they coexist?
Absolutely.
How?
It's a great question. So if you have a money mindset, I give the analogy of when you're young, you trade your time and energy for money. You're working in a job, you're trading your labor for money. So at some point in time, due to age or health or just intellectual interest in something else, you may not want to use that same energy for money. So to make yourself bulletproof, the idea of siphoning money off instead of working in a business to be able to take passive income to replace your salary is a mindset of the fact that, wait a second, instead of being in a business, I'm actually investing in businesses and I'm taking the dividends and profits from other people's labor. If you get to a point where that equilibrium on your balance sheet can support or replace your salary, you're bulletproof. And you could be more courageous to pursue things fearlessly if you understand that interrelationship.
Okay, so one of the things you talk about is something called the behavior gap.
Yes.
What is that? What does that mean? Like for me, I'm like, behavior gap, that's up my alley. Like that's my lane, right? But you're talking about something totally different.
So, I think we're in a performance obsessed culture, whether it's in sports or whether it's in academics or whether it's in finance. What makes the best? If someone won their basketball game last night, your kids won their basketball game, are they the best? Or if they lost, are they the worst? How do you define success and resilience? Right. So the behavioral gap is something in the financial vernacular, is the idea of if you buy something, whether it's the S&P 500 or whether it's a globally diversified portfolio of 60% stocks and 40% bonds, there will absolutely be a point in time, likely 40% of the time, whatever path you choose, you're going to think you're failing. And you're going to think you're failing relative to your neighbors, relative to your friends, relative to social media, relative to whatever you hear from external forces. Now, the question is, do you have resilience to keep going forward on a path indifferent to what's happening to anyone around you? And so the behavioral gap is trying to develop a degree of resilience to get on a path that you know you're going to be bulletproof, and you don't get seduced by the sirens of the latest shiny squirrel or object, as you point out, to say, you know what, I'm going to switch teams, you know, like using your children growing up. This team we've lost not because of my talent, but because the other guys didn't do their job, rather than developing a better team and a better culture and, you know, continuing to work. And this could be applied beyond finance to just people's general lives, for sure.
So let's apply it for one brief moment generally, and then let's go to the financial world.
Yeah.
You know, when we're talking about decision making, okay, there's a whole bunch of philosophies around decision making, but one primary philosophy is there isn't really no wrong decision as long as you get behind it. Get behind your decision, get behind it 100%, and put your energy and your focus on turning that decision into a good one. Kind of like when you choose to get married, you don't want to have doubt at that point. You just want to, like, you're making the decision, so get 100% behind it. Be in the marriage 100% fully. And if you're not 100% fully in that marriage, likelihood of success diminishes quite dramatically, right? Same concept there.
Yeah.
But sometimes we make wrong decisions, and sometimes we need to know when to pull the plug. And sometimes, you know, we might be in a job that's really not for us, or in a relationship that's really not for us. And we need to know when to call it a day. So how does this apply to financial decision making? And how do we know we're on the right path? And how do we know if and when to pull the plug? And who do we listen to anyway?
It's a great question. Wow, that's a tough one. So, excellent question. I'll just say it like this. The average holding period, this is how it applies to finance. The average holding period for investments in general has deteriorated in the last 25 years from people buying and holding something for 18 years to less than 3 to 4 years. If you own something, an investment for 3 to 4 years, whether it's a house, whether it's a stock, whether it's a mutual fund, whether it's an index fund, how can you ascertain the success or lack of success in 3 to 4 years, whether you're a genius or an idiot, particularly vis-a-vis the point of your planning for 50 to 100 years of your life? So my premise isn't to say that mistakes don't happen and you shouldn't pull the plug periodically when you're off track. It's that the mindset of, idealistically, if you were to buy something, what would I be comfortable with committing to and holding relative to understanding the impact to my balance sheet, my cash flow, my finances? What could I have the courage to hold for 10 years, knowing that over the course of 10 years, 40% of the time, I might have periods of discomfort? And that takes a tremendous amount of courage. It's not to say that you're going to do it, but I give a litany of examples in finance where I don't know what is the right path for everyone, but I absolutely know that a 3 to 4 year holding period generally is not a formula for success for most people, by witness of the actual numbers, because it bears out that investors end up, you know, being better off not ever trying to invest in the first place.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a very practical, tangible question. I'm going to ask two questions, but one is, we've been talking around here lately about, hey, should we buy an extra piece of real estate, something we can rent out? Is that something that makes sense in this day and age, or is that just total insanity? What do you think about that?
It depends. I think that if you want to get a call late at night and want to fix someone's, you know, pipes and fix someone's roof and deal with, you know, being the landlord, you're making a decision that you understand the geography, the demographic trends of the landscape, the economics of it, and if it makes sense. I happen to travel to Pittsfield, Massachusetts, which used to be General Electric's, one of General Electric's headquarters, and they abandoned Pittsfield. Well, if you bought a rental property in Pittsfield, you wouldn't be so happy today, 20, 30 years later.
Right.
So the philosophy that I would tell you is, you can concentrate to get rich and you diversify to stay rich. So you can concentrate on a single property and it could inure to a tremendous benefit, or do you have the temperament that it doesn't work out?
I see. So it depends on your ability to to handle a potential massive blow?
Depends on your understanding of yourself and, do you really understand the risk return of what you're getting yourself into?
So let's say someone came to you, and I know that you deal with, extremely wealthy families. I understand that. But let's say you have someone who says, hey, I just came into like $500,000. That's not a small amount. It's not a massive amount. It's a good amount. How should I invest it? What advice would you give to someone like that?
Well, I think that from a starting standpoint, in an understanding of finance, even though this isn't 100% true and people can argue this till the day they die, you should accept the fact that the financial markets are efficient.
Okay.
And that you're not smarter than everyone.
Okay.
And if you accept that you're not smarter than everyone, you have to understand that the probability of you outsmarting the world is actually very low.
Okay.
85% of people underperform simple passive indexes.
Okay.
So if you just own the collective conscious of the world, that's a good starting place where that you will, even though it's boring, it's watching paint dry, you will do better than 90% of the population.
Okay.
That's a good starting place.
That's a good starting place. Okay. So you said that you wanted to give people in grade 7 basic financial advice. What advice would you give someone in grade 7?
Pay yourself first. If you have
but
a paper,
I'm in grade 7. I'm not earning any money.
Well, if you have a paper route, or you start tutoring, or you start babysitting, there used to be I remember seeing like a money pig. Someone had developed this really cool concept: save, invest, donate. You have 3 jars instead of a single jar where you put everything in. You put, some of your money for your future self, some of your money to spend, and some of your money to others. If you can siphon money off toward not just personal consumption, but delayed gratification and toward others in a disciplined way, the concept of thinking that out of every dollar you earn, that 10 to 20 cents is not for you is a healthy concept to develop your own self-discipline.
So you would teach the concept of saving. Is the concept of saving the same as the concept of investment at the age of grade 7?
Absolutely. Because
Okay.
if you're putting money aside for a rainy day, you create that psychological safety, and then you put money away for your future self. Life happens, and there's going to be moments in time that you're going to thank your earlier self for those, earlier imbued good habits. And an example I give in the book is a woman who was 55 years old that never made more than $50,000 her whole life and had $3 million saved. And it was shocking to me, thinking how someone could live in Brooklyn and have $3 million saved, making $50,000 and did it all on her own. And it was just because her mom taught her the concept of saving a dime of every dollar for her future self. And she did it in a disciplined, religious way. And it was just mind-boggling.
So let's take a different age grouping, because it's an age grouping that I have a lot of in my life. The young adult age grouping. I have 5 kids. They're all between the ages of 20 and 26. And they're all in that place where they want to become independent. They want to figure out their finances. Some of them are making investments. Some of them are just finishing university, but they're all asking the question exactly, what's the wisest way to spend my money or not spend my money? One of the questions that comes up is, should I move out? If I move out, I'm basically, renting. I don't have enough money to buy. And the rent, we live in Toronto, is crazy expensive. There is no money really to save at the end of the day. So what do you recommend to these people? Stay at home, keep living there, forego my independence? What are your thoughts?
Excellent question. So this is part of a mindset. A 20 to 26-year-old may not fully understand this, but the idea is to become a CEO of your own future. And what does that mean? It doesn't really matter what job you're in at 20 to 26. If you're in a culture that you can learn and you can grow and you can develop, if the person is acting out of fear, oh, if I move out, I'm not going to be able to afford to save. Well, there's two things that you can change about your balance sheet that are in your control. Can I change the trajectory of my income? What can I do to make more money? What can I do to take on more responsibility and help the business that I'm in grow? Because if you help the business that you're in grow, you're going to make more money. You'll become more indispensable, and you'll have money not only to pay your rent, you'll be able to have money to buy a place. You'll have money to do a lot of things, but immediately will force you into mindset of owning your own future. So it might not seem financially practical, but it may light a fire to be able to be more self-motivated, to be able to find a way to make a much greater impact of going above and beyond, rather than just saying, I have a job, I'm clocking in at 9 and clocking out at 5. And
so what you're really saying, I'm translating, what you're really saying is that at that young age, people who start off and go get their jobs or whatever it is that they're doing need to think of those jobs as actually their businesses. They have to think about those jobs as though they own the job. And then
they own the business. Imagine they own the business. Yeah.
Right. When they own the business, they think about being in the business and growing the business very differently than an employee does.
Correct. If they just think that they have a job, they're gonna approach it totally different. Why they didn't get paid more, why they didn't do well. Well, then put yourself in the shoes of the owner and visualize yourself being the owner at some point in time. I want to own this business. If I own this business, what would I do? How would I approach this? How can I make a greater impact to the growth of this business? How do I create a bigger pool to be able to benefit everyone involved?
Okay, one more question. Because I'm asking, I think, interesting questions from a relationship standpoint too. So, young people, they're getting married, or maybe they're not that young anymore, but people are getting married and they come to marriages with a certain bank account or sum of information, property, whatever it is that they have. And they're entering into a marriage, like, how do you combine your pots, let's call it? How do you combine your earnings, your wealth? What do you recommend for that? Is that something we should keep separate?
It's an excellent question. I think that there's there's a degree of, when you get married, obviously there's a tremendous amount of trust and respect and honesty and understanding the other person, but also understanding yourself. And I think that some recognition of the fact that there's some pre-wiring that everyone has from 0 to 8 years of age that is the foundation for all of their decisions about trusting and commingling or not commingling and keeping things separate and keeping things apart and approaching things in different ways. So there isn't a one-size-fit-all answer that everyone should commingle and everyone should do things separate, but I think an honest, open conversation should happen initially and ongoing about shared ambitions. Oh, we want to buy a home together. Oh, let's figure out what sacrifices do we need to make to be able to buy the home. Oh, we want to take a vacation around the world or take a 6-month sabbatical. What do we need to do to design our life to do that? And then you reverse engineer the financial decision-making to be able to make those goals happen. It's the Mark Twain quote, I can help anyone get what they want if they just told me what they wanted. So right. You need to have an open communication to understand what the ambitions are, which aren't about money generally, but you need money to be able to make the ambitions possible.
Right. So what you're really saying is, like, 1,000,001 decisions can happen, 1,000,001 agreements can happen, but really we need to be on the same page. We need to have the same starting point. We need to be able to communicate about what we want and how we want it openly and effectively.
Brilliant.
Okay. So I'm going to give you the last word here because I'm really interested. So two last questions. What's your greatest source of frustration when you're working with clients who just don't get it? That's question number one. Let's start there.
So I have always taken the approach that it's sort of beginner's mind. In an expert mind, there's few possibilities. In a beginner's mind, there's limitless possibilities. So I try to approach it from a stance of how can I help? And if you look at it like objectively, without frustration, for me, as like a doctor, do no harm. You hear what someone's saying and you see what they're doing.
Yeah.
And all I have to do is just see what they're saying and what they're doing and saying, well, I hear you, but what you're doing isn't matching what you're saying. So how do we align things non-judgmentally, but just, I hear what you're saying, but what you're doing doesn't entirely match, that. And what can we do to bring you closer?
Right.
And in a loving, kind, compassionate way, if that can be done, which is maybe in art, it's a process that, particularly because coaching and emotional wiring keeps getting distracted, to keep bringing people back. I guess that's why my cousin and a lot of friends became chiropractors, because people constantly need adjustments.
That's right. So you didn't really answer the question. You were very politically correct, I have to say. So what is your area of greatest frustration? Is it when they say and they do different things? Is that the frustration? Like, what's the frustration?
The frustration is that it's my desire to make people bulletproof and to put people in a position where that they have financial freedom and abundance. And the frustration is it's not all on my shoulders. It requires a collaboration. Mm-hmm. And that collaboration requires a commitment and discipline on the client's part that has nothing to do with me. I give a story, and this is maybe politically correct or not. It's my stepfather was a doctor. Mm-hmm. And he would say a patient would come in, they'd be 300 pounds. And he'd say, well, I got to give you new nutrition, exercise. You got to do these things. And then they come in 350 pounds the next year. Well, that's very frustrating for a doctor, because I can give you advice, but I can't exercise for you. I can't put the food in your mouth. Everyone needs to take, like you gave the example of kids, 20 to 26. Everyone needs to take personal responsibility for their own future. And a coach, whether it's a frame of mind coach or a behavioral coach or a financial advisory coach, is needed to help keep people on track and to keep people centered to the things that they say are important to themselves.
So you know why that happens? You know why people who want to lose weight have trouble losing weight?
Because they don't know what.
It's not because they don't know what to do. I mean, in the case of financial bulletproofness, I think that a lot of people actually don't know what to do. But in the case of weight loss and health, we have so much information. Like, we're just drowning in information. Just choose one path and do it, right? So it's not that people don't know what to do. It's that something prevents them from doing it. And that has to do with their thinking. It has to do with their beliefs. It has to do with their upbringing. It has to do with their feelings of, hey, if I don't have this piece of chocolate cake on my birthday, then I'm missing out. Birthdays are all about chocolate cake. I have that. But it has to do with their thinking. And so a lot of diet programs, and maybe most financial advisors, give advice on what to do, rather than really understanding what prevents people from taking that course of action. And that's where frame of mind coaching was born. It was this realization that people can figure out what to do by and large, but they still don't do it. And so I started to study why. What actually prevents people from doing the things that they really want to do?
How do they take action? It's funny, last night I had a conversation with my father who's had cardiovascular disease, and I gave him an article or movie called Game Changers on a vegetarian diet. And he was like, yeah, I saw the movie, really cool. Here's a counter argument why that's all BS. And I said, fine, it may or may not be BS, but I know you have cardiovascular disease. So why don't you try it for 30 days and go get blood work and just let me know how it works. You don't have to commit to it forever. Try it for 30 days.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to. There's resistance, right?
Well, we'll see. He said he'll try.
Okay, well, let's see. I mean, people have resistance. So the question is, where does that resistance come from? What does resistance buy people? And typically people have resistance because it seems to protect them somehow. Protect them from something that they imagine to be there, right? So I'm really interested in that. Why do people wrap their arms around things that aren't fundamentally healthy for them or don't get them to their goals? And it has the illusion of protection. That's why people do that. Okay, one more question for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
What is the single greatest opportunity that people are not taking?
An abundant mindset. Just believing that the world is tomorrow is going to be better than the present, and every day going forward is going to be better. And you just have to keep moving forward. Whether it's in weight loss, whether it's in finance, you got to just, every setback is an opportunity for growth and learning, not a reason to curl up in a corner and quit. just keep moving forward. Keep taking one step after another.
Keep going forward. Or as I would like to say, move along.
Just move along. Just keep going forward. Don't sit at the water cooler. Keep moving forward.
Just move along. Okay. Jonathan, please tell us, how do people find you and how do they find your book?
I think the book is on Amazon.
Show us.
I think your book is on Amazon. Your Rich Life, a human approach to investment and building the wealth of your dreams. You can buy it on Amazon. The website is satovsky.com, Satovsky.
Say that slower. That's too fast.
Oh boy. S is in Sam. AT is in Tom. OV is in Victor. SKY. Satovsky.
Satovsky.
Satovsky, like a Russian illegal vodka.
Okay, got it. I don't know why I thought there were two T's in that word, but there are not. There's only one. Satovsky.
There you go. There you go.
Amazing. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining me today and co-hosting the Frame of Mind Coaching Podcast. It's always fun talking to you, even though we've only done it a couple of times. I get some kind of weird charge out of it. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and your expertise.
Thank you, and keep doing the amazing work you're doing, particularly as it relates to development of children, because at the end of the day, the children are the future leaders of culture and society. And if you can start young, developing good habits and mindsets in whatever that they're doing, that resilience will lead to a better culture and society that you would want to be part of. So good work on your part.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Until we meet again.
You got it. Bye.